a lot of youth in the fishing world are coming up, it's not necessarily something people learn on their own anymore. There's classes where you learn it, and I mean, that's all good stuff to learn quick, but to be truly good at something, you have to learn it on your own. Like Trad said, growing up, when I was 14 maybe, I had my boater's license. My dad would drop me off at the lake in the morning before he went to work. I took the trailer, leave in the parking lot. He'd go to work and drop me off, and I couldn't leave till 7 o'clock at night when he got off work, so I'm there. And I think most of those days in the summer, I might have caught one, maybe. But some days, there'd be 2 or 3 days in a row where I didn't even catch one. But that's the way you learn the best. If there's a technique, a pattern that you learn yourself, that's the way that you become truly skilled at that technique. Like, I fish a lot like Trad. I'll tell you some of our secrets here in a little bit. He knows too. But if you learn something yourself, like if Trad takes me out and teaches me how his skill with throwing a buzzbait, that's awesome. I learned it in one day. But more than likely, that's going to mold my style of doing it, and I'm never going to be better than him at it. If you learn it on your own, then you can you keep an open mind. And as you learn, you kind of adapt things to fit your style of fishing. And that's the best way to progress quickly throughout your career, get to college level, compete at college level, and maybe end up on the tour, the elites, the new MLF, or whatever. But you have to be truly good at what you learned, not the classes that teach you how to go drop shot. I mean, that's cool and all, and you'll learn it quick, but you're going to fish like whoever taught you. That's just the way that usually works. But the other thing is, you want to build also, if you are, I'm sure some of you hope to pursue a fishing career, potentially. Well, you want to build your name. I see a lot now in social media, people trying to, social media is a thing. It's here, it's not going anywhere. That's part of the fishing world. I kind of came in right at the kind of start of it, so I'm not that good at it. But that's the way people are building their careers now. But I see a lot of young people and things like that. They'll catch a fish and tag 50 companies, all my sponsors. And that's great to represent your sponsors to some extent. But I think the young gamers should be using your social media. I'm sure some of y'all have fishing pages, which is awesome. I mean, that's something I wish I'd have started when I was your age before I started fishing the tour. But in my opinion, you want to promote yourself, not necessarily companies. The companies at this point are taking advantage of a lot of people at high school teams and stuff like that, and not doing much but expecting a lot in return. So you promote yourself. This giant fish I caught in Lake Greenwood, and tag yourself. I mean, I'll tag Brandon Cobb Fishing, hashtag Brandon Cobb Fishing. Promote yourself, and the big companies will come. All my sponsors I have now, which I've got my foot in the industry pretty well now, but they all came to me from results, from when I was putting in hours when I was 13, 14 years old, learning how to catch fish, showed results to get to where I am, and sponsors came. That's kind of one thing that there's way too much emphasis put on the sponsor game and all that. You learn to catch fish, all that happens. There's no need to try to hashtag this, pound sign that, whatever. I don't know what all that is. I do what I can with it. But it's the way to do it is definitely put your time in on the water, focus on learning your own skill set, and perfecting it. I mean, and all that takes is, I mean, it's not, you can't read FLW magazine, you can't read Bassmaster magazine. It's great to do, but you have to put your time in, learn how to do things, and just, if something doesn't work, try something different, and just keep molding your fishing style, and you'll develop your own fishing style eventually, and trust your instincts. And like me, I'm a shallow water power fisherman. I don't know if any of y'all watch any tournaments. That's what I do. I run the bank, I fish a jig, a buzzbait, top water, things like that, and I stay shallow. And as you start spending more time in water, you'll develop your style, and don't try to look at so-and-so, oh, he won a tournament last week, drop shot. That's what I need to do. That's how they're catching them, drop shotting. Well, if you like to drop shot, yeah, you can probably go catch them drop shotting, but that's not the only way to catch them.
I'll ask you a question to kind of ease into that. It's a big question that I get, and now I guess y'all understand what he's saying is get good at one thing. You know what I'm saying? You can't go from, my style of fishing, and Lily just found out that we pick the trolling motor at 400 times a day. Christian knows. He's fished with us also. What you're trying to say is get good at one thing, shallow water angling. Don't be jumping back and forth, up and deep, or either be a deep water angler and get real good. And I just want to kind of point that out. That's
definitely like I'm a shallow or power fishing, but you want to learn to become versatile, but you always want to focus on your style of fishing. Like the tournaments I've done well in, when you get to like college level, you'll be trying to qualify for like a national championship or something like that. And in high school too, you are as well. But there's tournaments where you can practice your style and you need to become proficient at others, because I'll go to a tournament and I'll practice 2 days the way I think I can win the tournament. Shallow water power fishing. If that doesn't work, I've became over the years proficient enough at other techniques to get some points, get a check, qualify for championships, things like that. But you definitely, to win tournaments and to progress, you are going to have to develop your style of fishing, which a lot of you probably already have. Fishing's a lot bigger now. You've probably fished a lot more tournaments at your age than I had at my age, because I couldn't do that. So y'all have an opportunity that I didn't have when I was growing up. I was about 3 years before it probably. But definitely, that if there's anything to take away from it, don't try to mold your fishing style to what somebody else says or what somebody else is doing on another lake. And that boils down to the information thing. I don't know if I'm calling anybody out, I'm not meant to, but I get 30 messages a month on, hey, I've got a tournament on Hartwell High School tournament. What do I need to do out there? That I don't reply to a single one of them, because that's not the way you learn. It's nothing bad. I mean, a lot of people just don't know. That's their way to find fish, is they talk to somebody that's fished a lake or doing well. But to put your time on the water, learn your style, and focus on that when you go to a lake. And if that doesn't work, you kind of become more versatile over time. But at your age, you'll develop your style, and there's always a way to catch them the way you want on the lake for the most part. But any questions or anything over what I've said so far?
Guys, this is one heck of opportunity. I mean,
it's kind of a broad topic, so if there's anything.
I got one for you. When you go to the lake and you put your boat in the water on
practice like technique.
When you put your boat, I hate to say this, but because I know your answer, because remember I asked you.
Mm-hmm.
See, I asked him about a year ago what he did when he put his boat in the water, and that's the key to how your day goes for me. So when you get to a new lake, let's say it ain't even a new lake, let's say it's Hartwell, Clark Hill,
yeah,
Okeechobee. What's the first thing you do when you back your boat in the water on and crank that boat up?
Well, when I go to a lake, it varies depending by lake. But when I put my boat in, like I go to just some random lake in the U.S. that I've never been to in my whole life, my first thing, I'll make a loop around the lake, look around it, or if it's too big, I'll loop around a certain part of the lake that looks by map like what I think fits what I'm used to fishing here for the most part, and look for specific things that's something I fish on these lakes around here.
So you're looking for something that fits your style.
Yeah, something fits my style, like whether it's some shallow woods, shallow grass, something like that, something I like to fish, and I'll start on that. And usually you'll get a bite. And that's actually the funny thing about practice, what I've learned in the tour over years. We get 3 days of practice, right? So you would think by the third day of practice, you know a heck of a lot more of what's going on than your first hour of practice. I would say 8 out of 10 tournaments, I've ended up fishing the pattern that was my very first bite of practice.
Do you get there? Do you get there because you do a good bit of studying of the lake before you get there? Kind of like what's the forage? What's the style?
I'm not one of those. I don't do a ton of research on the lake before I go. I don't think, if you look at research, that comes back to, or if you look at reports or look at old tournament results, that goes back to kind of getting information and molding your fishing practice to what somebody did last time.
That's right.
And it's going to mess you up most of the time. So that's why I think, because like I said, I put the boat in, I run, look for something I'm familiar with, something I like to fish. And usually my first bite is off something I'm familiar with and I like to fish, and then I'll do other crazy things, a lot of other practice, but I go back to what I'm comfortable with. And it doesn't always work, but if you're going to win, you're very rarely going to win off something you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, it's happened for me before, but most of the time it's something that you've done for years, you know how to do, even if it's an adaptation of it a little bit. Like, just maybe like you're used to doing on shallow wood. Well, this lake has flat banks it doesn't have shallow wood, but it's got some little bank grass on it. Same type fish. Fish use the same things all around the country. So that's kind of the way I mold my practice. I look for something with enough similarities to the things I fish around here that I feel comfortable doing it.
Anybody got anything?
So like you said that you don't do a whole lot of research, but do you like look on like Google Maps to see like what areas around the
Yeah, that's different. Like Google Maps, I use Google Maps. I get topo maps, you know, the old school paper maps that fold up 47 times. I get those, and I look at those a lot. And one thing that is great to know, I'm glad you asked that actually, because it made me think of it. You do want to look, if you're going, I'm sure y'all fish lakes you've never fished before, like the high school championship, things like that. You need to know what is expected at the lake. Like I'll try to find tournament results. I'm not trying to figure out how they caught them, but I need to know, am I looking for 2 pounders, 2.5 pounders, 3.5 pounders? I need to know what it's taking. Because if you go to a lake you've never been before, and you're catching 1.5 pounds, like, man, this is no good. I don't know. But then a tournament last week took 9 pounds. Well, it's a little different. So I'll look for information as far as weights, things like that. But I don't want to know how people are catching them for the most part.
It took me a lot of years. I spent a lot of money by listening to what I thought that was going to work on that lake. Because you got to buy lures, you got to buy everything, and then I waste 3 days of practice trying to figure out what everybody else is doing.
My first year on tour, I probably spent $4,000 or $5,000 at tackle stores at every lake I go to, buying baits that I needed for that lake. I thought, guess how much money I spent in the last 2 years at out-of-state tackle stores? Probably about $100 for hooks or something I needed. And for the most part, if it works here, if it's something you need, when you go, aside from, we go to Florida or something like that, we don't have punching weights, all that junk. But and for the most part, you've got what you need fishing around here. You don't have to, there's nothing crazy that works somewhere else in the country that doesn't work around here. For the most part, at least, other than maybe punching some grass or dragging a tube for smallmouth, something like that. But
I don't think none of us have ever did that.
Well, it's awesome.
You ain't gonna do that in my boat.
Yeah,
The
small.
water temperature make you decide which way you wanna go when you get to a lake.
You talking about as far as the river, dam, things like that?
As far as what the fish are doing by the water temperature.
Yeah, I do. One thing that's took me a little getting used to is water temp. It varies around the country on what it makes the fish do. Like our fish around here, they generally move it up to the bank. I'll look at it first around the spawn specifically to know what stage they're in. Around here, they're moving up about 52 to 55, and then out. But like you go farther north, it might be 48 or 50. That means is that stage to move up. Like prime example, we're in Kentucky. At Cumberland this year, and the water temperature was like 52 degrees, and they were actually already on bed up there. And it's just because those fish are used to that colder water, and that's something kind of know as you go around the country. Cold to us might not be cold the farther north you go, or the farther south you go, vice versa. So I do look at the water temperature, mostly just to know what stage, if I think most are pre-spawn, most are spawning, or most are post-spawn.
So if you was them and you had to go catch a fish on our lakes, I tell them 100 times, a confidence bait, guys, and I teach this, and it's the first thing I told you, was it not? Is the same thing with you, Christian, is fish your confidence baits. Everybody, it don't matter if it's a pond fish, if you don't have the confidence in the bait, you're gonna put it down. And if you don't get it right. So around here, what you think should be a good confidence bait. So in this our trail, we run points.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. We have 3 tournaments, so you better catch something. So, 5 pounds might win the tournament. Then again, I've seen 19 pounds win them. So
I'm a power fisherman, so my confidence baits are a buzz bait, pretty much, or a jig for the most parts of the year. But you always gotta have a shaky head on. Year round, you gotta have a shaky head on. So that's if there was 3 baits to have tied on, especially in the fall around here, you have a jig on, shaky head, and a buzz bait, pretty much. And and a lot of people, a drop shot's a staple for a lot. You can always catch fish on a drop shot if that's your style of fishing. And that's one thing that for some reason, over the years, I see like power fishing versus like finesse fishing. Finesse fishing has always became like sissy, I guess you'd say. Like people are like, oh, he's fishing a little spinning rod, or I don't like power fish. People say that. Like they think they're cool because they say they like power fish. Well, it's not bad to be a finesse fisherman. Cody Meyer on the tour is probably the best in the world, the best at catching limits, made more money than almost everybody on the tour, and I very rarely have ever seen him without a spinning rod in hand. So it's not bad if your style is finesse fishing, then that's what, I mean, you can make a lot of money doing it, and you can catch big bags doing it. I sat beside Cody Meyer specifically, one time on Tennessee River Lake, and it was just a big community school with a bunch of boats on it, and none of us ever caught a bass. There was about 10 of us fishing 30, 40 yards apart, because it was a little different situation, a big school of bass out deep. And I never had a bite, nobody else had a bite. Cody Meyer had 24.5 pounds and caught them all sitting beside me on 4-pound test with the little worm. So, I mean, finesse fishing has its applications. It's definitely something to keep in mind. But talking about, me and Trav talked about this the other day, actually. Something that a lot of people don't understand, like etiquette fishing.
This is a big guy.
Yeah,
This is a
it made
big
me
thing
think-
right here for.
It made me think of it
these
because of like Kentucky Lake. So a lot of people, like new people I fish with, or people who've been fishing for a long time, they don't really understand like etiquette. When you pull up somebody, is that too close to fish to them? Is this not? In my opinion, around here, if you are on a stretch of bank, if you pull up in front of somebody, you're too close. I don't care if you're 300 yards. You're too close, but it varies. You watch a lot, I'm sure y'all seen FLW tournaments, bass tournaments, and you see 8 of the top 10 fishing 30 yards apart. Well, what people don't understand is like in Florida, Potomac River, Grass Lakes, or on Kentucky Lake, or some of the school lakes, Tennessee River Lakes, there might be 10,000 fish in a place the size of this like lot here. And that's different, but around here, where y'all are fishing mostly, there's no such thing. You're wasting your time fishing close to somebody because there's about 3 bass in every 7 miles around here. So if you're fishing beside somebody, you're just competing for one of those 3 bass. So etiquette-wise, around here, very few situations should you ever really fish anywhere where you can almost see somebody. And that's it varies around the country, but around here, etiquette. If I pull in a pocket and somebody's in there, unless it's a giant pocket, just go on somewhere else. And that's kind of always been my philosophy around here, and it's never worked out for me to try to pull in front of somebody. I've done it, everybody's done it. You pull up, I'm like, oh man, that was kind of a little close. You get there, but it happens, but it usually does not work out if you're trying to fish like that.
So at the end of the day, it's better, especially in our lakes. So you say at the end of the day, if you think there's a fish in this pocket right here, guess what? There's a fish in the next pocket.
In the next
too,
pocket
'cause
too.
you're
And
running
or
back.
they might not catch that fish, and you come back later when they leave.
You're
I mean,
running different styles. What me and him seen, you're running different styles. Somebody might have went through there throwing a shaky head.
That's
You
right.
come through with them with a buzz back behind them to catch one that
And our fish move
that
a
was
lot.
looking up.
Our fish move a lot around here, and they might not be in the position to catch. So you're better off just leaving it on, come back, and it might be right when you come back later.
And it always to the end of it, and you know, and been in a situation like him in a long time. A lot of y'all guys fished a long time. In the very end, though, you know, all you got's your name. You know, you cut somebody off, you're gonna make the whole team look bad. You're gonna make yourself look bad. You know, we was at Kentucky Lake. We had one little old drain we had to fish in. I went to Kentucky Lake when Dale and them come in 10th. We fished our style up there. And we had a kid come in there trying to get in there on top of us, and his boat captain kept saying, "That's too close." He said, "I don't care. Just heck with them."
Well,
You know, but in my eyes, if I knew that team, knew that jersey, that makes everybody look bad. So that's the reason I asked you to speak about it. It's just there's, you know, I know all y'all. I fished against all y'all for a long time. And we're very respectful, like Brady and them. I come up on, we fish a lot of lights, so we're around each other all the time. Y'all caught 2 behind me the other day, cause I didn't slow down. They caught them on the shaky head. But
shaky head's where it's at sometimes.
it is. But and that's kind of what he's getting to. Is just be respectful. You know, if they're schooling on a point, they're gonna be schooling on that point. When you leave, let it reset.
Well,
You know,
and
30
and
minutes
you
later,
know-
they'll be schooling again.
After practice, you know kind of how many fish are somewhere. Like at Kentucky Lake, I've got one, like that's a prime example. At some point, all y'all fish that type of ledge tournament where you're gonna be around boats. It's just gonna happen. But from practice, you should know, is there 30 fish in this school and I have to land my bait where this table is? Well, then you know there's no point in pulling up with this guy or with somebody else. But is that school of fish the size of this lot, like I said, and can you pull up on that end, he's on that end, he's probably not gonna move because he's sitting there. That's a little different situation, and that's from practice, you know how many fish are there. So, and that's the type, well, I usually make a judgment call off that. I know what's my places that are gonna be community hole type places where there's a lot of boats, and then I know my places that are one cast type places that if there's somebody there, I'll just have to come back later.
Mm-hmm. No, we're small, but a lot of good information flying out here. I got a video too. You're gonna go on
Good.
YouTube. anything else? I mean, we can talk about Clark Hill, we got an upcoming tournament up. I really don't wanna talk about it, we can go ahead, 'cause we fish just alike. But, what would you say on Clark Hill in September, October?
Well, it's fall time fishing. There should be some fish coming back up shallow with the bait coming up and everything, which a lot of fish stay shallow year round at Clark's Hill. But definitely, me personally, I'd be throwing shallow wood. The grass is in the water now, so moving buzz bait, top water around the grass, and just trying to cover water and figure out where there's bait. The shad should be coming back up, getting up in the creeks, in the grass, and some of the stained water. We're about to get a good bit of rain soon, so if it's enough to get some water coming in without getting it chocolate soup muddy, it could definitely turn on some of the creeks.
So do you leave when you see that chocolate milk 1 or 2
I do.
days after it happens?
How
How many days, y'all
That's a good
understand what I'm
question.
talking about? Like you pull into a creek, you was catching fish in on, let's say you practice, you have a blowout Friday night, it rained 3 inches.
That's a real good question.
Do
I'm
you go in
actually
there and
still-
spend an hour fishing that mud, or
If
do you move on?
it's practice, I'll spend a couple hours to see if they're still in it. If it's a tournament and I don't get a bite in like 15 minutes, I knew they were in there. That's different. But usually my rule of thumb when I'm trolling in a creek, if the mud is a different color behind the boat where I'm trolling than it is what the water looks like, I don't fish it.
Took me a long time to learn
Yeah,
that.
if it's swirling, it ain't no good.
I'm not gonna let y'all have this video.
But that's generally my rule of thumb. It's simple. Just look behind the boat like, oh, that's muddier than it is up there. Go somewhere else.
So them fish, the whole key to that fish wise, fish don't like it. They don't like that water mixing like that. I don't know if it's the gills. I don't think it's a sight thing. The mixing of the water, I think it's just something they breathe in. There's a lot of sediment in the water.
I think they
just
actually
like you.
leave. They don't. I don't think they don't bite. They don't leave.
They don't
They
leave.
move out of it.
So how many days do we let it settle? Let's say we found them fish on a
I-
Sunday and our tournament's next Saturday. 'Cause a lot of people play volleyball and basketball and football.
Yeah,
You're seeing they're coming from practice tonight.
in that fresh muddy water, I just kind of use like a gauge on does it look like it's still mixing. That's what I call it. When I can see the swirlies behind the boat, I call it mixing. When it's still mixing, it's no good. But usually it takes about 3 days to 4 days for it to just be muddy good. Muddy's good. Muddy's not bad. A lot of people are scared of muddy water, but mud's good for the most part if you want to fish shallow. Real bad for fishing deep. If you're fishing deep, it's muddy. It's no good. But if it looks just muddy, like not swirly, just muddy, then it's good. And I'll give it effort, like enough effort to know if they're still there, at least a couple hours.
All right, I can have you up here all day. But y'all got any questions for him before I let him get out of here?
How long do you